Right. Lovely. I'm going to open the door. Good afternoon, everybody. While we're waiting for Zoom to do its thing, welcome to the oh, I can't even say it now, Anna. Perimenopause Performance and the Power of Support webinar with the fabulous Anna Allerton. We'll just wait for everybody to join us. Please do introduce yourself in the chat, a little bit about your role in sport, where in the world you're calling from. If this is your first Women's Sport Collective session, we don't treat you any differently. It's just nice for us to know. So yeah, please do make your connections. Hopefully that everybody's in. I'm really not going to take much time because I know you're all here for the main act with Anna. So I will hand over really quickly, but just a quick thank you for all being here. The collective's still growing. We've reached over 15,000 members this last week, which we're delighted with. And we're still, the membership's growing and growing all the time. One little reminder is that we have another webinar tomorrow. We don't often do two in a week, but here we are. And it's a workshop for an interactive session for coaches and people working with young coaches and how they can build confidence, not just in their sporting, but in their lives. So that's a really powerful session in partnership with our lovely partners from Fight for Peace. So that's tomorrow at 11 till 12. So please join us if you can. Right, and no more from me. Over to Anna. I was lucky enough to meet Anna the first time. It's probably about 5 or 6 years ago when we very first started working with the Women's Sport Collective, when Sky Sports was our first enabling partner that really gave us the funding to get going. So we've had a very long and happy relationship. And I'm absolutely delighted to have seen her switch from her previous career into such a wonderful professional business coach and the fabulous work that she's doing with the field to boardroom sessions and the impact that's having on women across all sports. So you're very welcome, Anna, and I'm delighted to hand over to you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks, Kate, for the warm welcome. And hello, everyone. It's so nice to see so many of you on a call today. And I've just got this very awful problem of so much sun has suddenly just flooded in my office. So I am squinting a little bit, but we haven't seen the sun for a while. So I don't really want to have to put my blinds down on you all. So thank you for being here. One of the things I would say is just show up however you need. If you need to get up and have a walk around, if you want to put me in your ears as you go get some steps in, if you want to eat, whatever you want to do, use this time and space in the most productive way for yourself. So as Kate said, I'm going to talk about perimenopause, performance and sport. One of the things that would be really helpful, and you're all introducing yourselves, and it's so lovely to see everyone's background in the chat box. If anyone wants to just pop in there how they're showing up today, whether it's to educate yourselves, whether you're leading teams and this is on your agenda, or whether you want it to be on your agenda, if you're curious, if you're going through it, if you're however it is, just pop a couple of words in to let me know how you're showing up and what got you curious about joining us today. If it's learning and education, absolutely fine, because Kate and I were both just saying that's exactly what we needed when we started navigating this time. And I also said to Kate that I would offer to do a few things throughout, and I imagine by the time I get through it, brain fog will trip me up here and I'll forget. But I want to create a really safe space for everyone here. So just a note in terms of sort of contracting for a really safe and trusted conversation today. We will have a Q&A later. If you do have any questions, please wait until I sort of prompt you to pop them in the chat box. And this session is being recorded. So if you want to protect or do this anonymously for whatever reason, which is important to you, please feel free to direct message in the chat a question to Kate, who will happily ask any questions on your behalf. And there's going to be lots of information I'm going to give you today. And I'm mindful that in our professional lives, we are often bombarded with slides and information. This is such a deeply complex subject, and I'm trying to keep it very top line for you today, but I do have lots of slides. So I'm going to apologize if that's not an effective way for how you learn, but I've had to try and consolidate a lot of stuff to get it into the time that we have today. And the purpose of today is not to create any sort of fear or trepidation, or you to read any of this and think, oh my goodness, this is going to be awful. It is to educate. to support and to inform you. It's also a safe space if you are struggling, so that you feel heard, that you are not in isolation, and that you are absolutely not the only person perhaps feeling how you are feeling, navigating perimenopause and menopause and hormonal health generally. So this space is for everyone to show up in whichever way serves you best. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Where are we? Here we go. I'm hoping this has gone blank on my screen, so please don't go blank on here. Oh, it has. All right, bear with me. It's on a go slow once it's lunch break. Here we go. I'm just going to put this on the full screen here for you all. I'm going to whiz through here as to what is on the agenda. Kate, can you just give me a thumbs up that you can see this okay? Awesome, thank you. So we are going to be talking all about what we outlined at the top there. These are some of the things that we're going to get stuck into. So really there's sort of three pillars to this that I want to explore today around who I am and really why I'm sat here before you talking about perimenopause. We'll talk about my own experience of perimenopause and my time at Sky as a journalist and the impact it had on me. But the work I do now as an executive coach is very much focused on women's careers, their leadership and their performance in the workplace. So in terms of, you know, my code of ethics and protecting professional boundaries, I'm not showing up to you as a medical professional. I'm not qualified to give medical advice. I'm not a PT and I'm not a nutritionist. So that's one thing that I think is really important for honesty and transparency. I talk about culture change in the workplace and really supporting women in their careers and professional lives to thrive and to have really incredible, brilliant and impactful careers, and also to support them in what they want to do for their reality. So why is workplace support needed around menopause? There's a lot of people that I speak to who will say, why is this discussion that's really relevant and needed in the workplace? So I've got some data to really help you understand more UK-wide what this is looking like for women in work. How can we work smarter as individuals? So this is my sort of individual coaching model that I'll share a little bit more deeply with you, just to sort of start the curiosity. There is always action that we can do for ourselves. And sometimes when we're feeling a bit challenged and depleted with our hormones, it's nice sometimes to have a gentle reminder and also some signposting. How can we support ongoing success is one of the pillars that we're going to get stuck into today as well. And that's around if we are leading teams, but also for ourselves personally, but also that wider conversation, even as a group here in the collective, how can we support each other and the ongoing success of women in the workplace. So a little bit about me before I get stuck into some of the data. And I, as Kate said at the very beginning, I spent 20 years at Sky Sports. I worked in the Sky Sports News newsroom for most of that time. I founded the Sports Women programme back in 2012 and really sort of was part of quite a small but mighty group at Sky that was really trying to disrupt and change things for women's sport on screen. Almost back in the time where it was really uncool to be doing so. And I'm sure I'm talking to friends here when I say this. And it was very much around, a lot of people said when I was talking and doing work around women's sport that it was career suicide, and look where we are now. So it's such a joy to come back and really look at some of the reflective learning from my time at Sky. I've got two children, two daughters. I've got a 6-year-old, I've got an 8-year-old. And it was on my second maternity leave. It was really on maternity leave. And as I was transitioning back into the newsroom, that I just didn't feel well. I didn't feel right. And some of the way that I was feeling was becoming increasingly alarming to me. And I was about 3 or 4 months back into the workplace. Sports Women had come to a natural end when I went on maternity leave, and we kind of collectively decided that that it was the right time to stop and push that accountability onto different production teams, to sort of pick up that baton and to continue it. And when I came back, I was leading our special journalism and investigative journalism team. A dream job, actually, one that I had been really proud to occupy and that I was really eager to get stuck into. But unfortunately, my symptoms of perimenopause became quite debilitating. I was one of sort of 25% of women that do experience a more severe impact from perimenopause. I was 37, 38 at the time. And I kept going back to my GP and asking for support and talking around symptoms that were showing up for me. I just got dismissed constantly for about a year, about just over 11 months, actually. So we'll call it a year. I was sort of fobbed off with antidepressants. Antidepressants were not going to tackle half of the sort of more physical symptoms that I had. I would say the majority of my symptoms were psychological, I guess, in a very simplistic form. You've got the kind of psychological symptoms and then the physical symptoms. My symptoms were brain fog, anxiety, loss of confidence, insomnia, heart palpitations, panic attacks. The brain fog was probably the most debilitating for me. And so again, I know I'm amongst friends if I sort of say that I actually thought I was going mad. I truly did, because I wasn't being heard. I was showing up to work and I was failing to recall names of colleagues. I was working with very high profile senior people in sport and I couldn't recall names. Live TV and brain fog and a lot of the other symptoms was frankly quite a car crash. And so it became apparent to me that I couldn't continue in that environment. It just wasn't, until I got treated and diagnosed, it just wasn't going to be a comfortable existence for me. So I kind of jumped out of one fire and went into another. And I think at points, maybe this is where actually I was probably slightly mad, but I decided to take up the role of head of internal comms over in the corporate affairs team at Sky, reporting directly into the CEO. It was a brilliant position. I loved it, but I continued to just be ignored and unheard by my GP. So unfortunately, I had to make the difficult decision to quit my job. So I walked away from a 20-year career in journalism, which at the time I felt out of control with. It wasn't something that I really sort of wanted to do. I still had things that I wanted to achieve in my journalism career. 4 years on, I now see it as a gift, actually. And it's an opportunity for me to really engage some of my incredible skills as a journalist, but also a women's sport advocate and advocate for women in a slightly different way now. When I left Sky, I wanted to learn something and to keep my brain active. So I qualified. I went back to the books, back to school, and qualified as an executive coach. And I'm accredited with the EMCC and I'm ICF trained. So really sort of went for that kind of top level training option so that I could serve my clients in the best possible way. And I was always quite curious about coaching and the power of coaching. And I was kind of applying a lot of the competencies in my leadership roles at Sky. And so it was a really great opportunity to really sort of solidify some of it and actually realize where some of my application was perhaps not how it should be. So it was a brilliant opportunity to learn and to grow as an individual. And so I left that qualification thinking, this is very similar to journalism. This is what lots of people say. They say, oh, you've gone from journalism in the sports world into coaching. And actually, there's a lot of similarities in asking insightful questions, active listening. So what are they not saying? And also, understanding what the root cause is, what's the story or what's the top line, I guess, in journalism standards. So I felt like it was a transition. And so what I also quickly realized is that although I felt in isolation and weak and powerless that I've walked away from a job, I actually realized that I was not alone at all, far from it. And once I started getting the confidence to use my voice to talk about my experience of perimenopause, I started to engage with lots of people saying, this is me too. So I took a slightly brave, mad, I don't know, step as to setting up my own business, of which has been thriving for the last 4 years, where I work with women during transition, not transition in their careers in terms of job change necessarily, but big life transitions that impact careers. So I work with women coming back from maternity leave all the way through to menopause. And it's given me an amazing opportunity, to sit in front of people like yourselves to share a little bit and to pass on some shared learning and education. But I've also co-authored a book. I've got it here. It's Myths of Menopause, and actually a lot of my sport influence comes through in my contribution to this book, and actually how women's sport is an inspiration to how we can navigate our menopause journeys in the workplace. And I also, as Kate mentioned, co-founded Field to Boardroom a couple of years ago with the former government menopause employment champion, brilliant woman called Helen Tomlinson. And this is a spotlight space for women working in sport, so that we're really furthering the interests of women's health, that we're having difficult conversations with workplaces, and that we are creating more inclusivity around not just menopause, but all women's health. So that's a little bit about me. I'm using these terms perimenopause and menopause, but I'm just going to pause for a moment here just to give key terms and definitions. Now, for anyone going through this, have gone through it, this is where you can eat your sandwich or grab your cup of tea, because you're incredibly knowledgeable already. But for those of us who, much like me years ago when I started going through this, I didn't have a clue what any of this was. So, menopause is kind of an umbrella term really for other elements of this: early menopause, perimenopause, menopause, post-menopause, surgical menopause are just some of the other experiences that sort of fall under that one term. So just kind of contracting here for when I say menopause, it's catching all, because I'd be here all day talking to you if I had to list all the different scenarios that this shows up for women. So very briefly, and again, I'm not a doctor, so this is sourced from the NHS and the British Menopause Association websites, but just to give you that definition, if you're sat here thinking, okay, but what actually is it? So perimenopause is when our hormone levels start to change, but before our periods stop for good. The average age is mid-40s, but I'd really encourage you through this conversation to hold that quite lightly, because, not just myself, but for lots of different reasons, women can experience this earlier. Menopause is when you have not had a period consecutively for 12 months, and the average age, again, held lightly, is 45 to 55. But examples of different communities, such as South Asian and Black women, can experience this life stage much earlier and sometimes for longer. So this is, a blunt definition almost, but, holding space for the different sort of leverage either side of this is really important. And menopause can happen earlier naturally as a result of conditions, for example, POI, or after certain surgery, certain chemotherapy surgeries, for example, and treatments, and cancer surgery can push people into menopause much earlier. So I share some of this as an introduction because the one thing that I would encourage you to take away from today is that menopause is not a one size fits all. There's lots of influences, for however many of us are on this call right now. So I think right now the participants are at 92. I am very confident to say that all 92 of us may have a different experience of menopause. And there's lots of reasons for this. So, lifestyle, ethnicity, our socioeconomic background, culture, genetics, neurodiversity, experiences of trauma, access to medical care, even our location in the world, all considerations for how this could show up completely differently for all of us joining this call today. And transgender and non-binary people can also experience menopause. So this starts to help you understand a little bit why at the top I said I am going to have some slides for you, and it's very hard to condense this into just a few, and you can see why. This is quite a big, vast, complex subject. And I think this is the reason why a lot of workplaces, especially, really grapple with how do we show up in this? What do we do? And sometimes it's a very sort of stagnant start of trying to really understand this. And it's quite right, isn't it? It's hard to create culture where so many different factors can influence how this shows up for people. But I think this is also really important because if you are feeling one way and your neighbour sat next to you is feeling a different way, that is okay. I don't want you to feel isolated or to think that there's something wrong or there's something different going on with you. It's perfectly normal. And as the research around women's health and particularly menopause catches up, we will start to really understand this in a lot more detail. So when I talk about research, I get a bit excited. I think it's the journalist in me to actually have some data and numbers that you can talk about, because then you can always understand a bit more of a story from that. So I kind of grew up, and forgive me for making this quite a sweeping statement, but none of us taught about this in school. I grew up thinking, oh, there's just women, they're in their 50s, they get hot flushes and they get a bit ragey. But actually, far from it. This is not about women in their 50s getting hot and angry. And actually, some of the data that we're starting to get through now is really evidencing that for us. And actually, last year, at the end of last year, Menopause Mandate, which are a powerful group doing a lot of research into this subject, surveyed over 15,000 women who found that actually some of the worst symptoms, as you can see here on the left-hand side, are anxiety, panic attacks, brain fog, and low mood. So it's really starting to sort of challenge some of the stigma and stereotype attached to this subject in society more widely. This is another checkpoint here for me to say, when you are reading some of this, please do not take it that this is going to happen to me. This is going to be absolutely dreadful. And now I'm really scared. This is not what this is about at all. And it's certainly not intended. It's about education and information so that you feel confident to self-advocate and understand this subject a little bit better. I didn't, and I was playing massive catch-up mode. And when we joined the call just before you all arrived with Kate, she also said the same. So I want you to sort of realize that the education around this, we're all trying to educate ourselves. Good news is that things are changing around this. Young people from the age of 14 will be learning about this in their curriculum. That became part of the curriculum a few years ago, thanks to some amazing campaigning and advocacy for some absolute sheroes in the menopause space. But actually, what this data here is affording us is helping us understand what is disrupting women and women now, and therefore what action can be taken to really mitigate around it and create supportive structures around it. And this is why this is important in the workplace. So 86% said that they've experienced brain fog. So, for those of you who have hearing the term brain fog for the first time perhaps today, for me, in a very sort of simple way, it's just a failure to recall information, names. I walk into the kitchen and I'm thinking, what have I gone in there for? And then I sort of have to make my brain work a bit harder. Often when I'm doing presentations like this, I will pause and I'll think, hang on, where was I going next with this? Or what was that question you just asked me? And it's that awareness of it's the changes in your hormones in your body is making your brain adjust and work differently. So brain fog is a term that if you haven't heard about it until today, you're probably likely to hear about this attached to this conversation of menopause moving forward. 77% say that it's impacted relationships and their work. Weight gain is also really common and widely reported. Fatigue, 70% say fatigue, which I can relate to massively because of insomnia, that kind of waking up at 3 a.m. and not being able to get back to sleep, and then having to go through the workplace the next day until you can get some rest the following day. It makes life very challenging. Joint and muscle pain, low libido, hot and cold flushes, and night sweats are also just over the 50% mark, widely reported. So when I go into workplaces, I will often say, And I do a lot of like sort of senior leadership spotlighting on this subject with people who are really trying to make adjustments to culture. And I really encourage them to maybe select 2 or 3 from this list and try and work every day managing it. But then also understand that deeper layer underneath, in that it is taking women on average 10 months to be treated by their GP. And there's a lot of confusion around it. And then you need to just go on social media and then you're flooded with information of people telling you what and how you should be doing things. So it can be a very overwhelming time. So the reality then, if we just spotlight a little bit in the workplace, which is kind of my bread and butter and where I'm particularly passionately focused, is what impact is this having on the workplace now? What's the reality? And a lot of people say to me, women have been going through menopause forever. It's a fact of life. And why is it so different now? And I think, we can look at lots of reasons for that. But, first and foremost, we've got more women in the workplace than we have before. Women over the age of 50 are now the fastest growing demographic of the UK workforce. So, life is very different. Women contribute to the home with, mortgages, bills, childcare, all of those things, and they do so from working really hard in the workplace. And the problem is that actually, because of menopause and poor support around menopause, is that women are walking away from the workplace. So we've got 4.5 million women aged between 45 and 60 currently in employment in the UK, but 61%, which is a significant number, 61% have said they've never heard their employer talk proactively about menopause. And what that says to individuals who do need some conversation or support, or need their employer to know what is going on, is that it makes it a very, very difficult conversation to have with a line manager, because you don't know what support is in place or how that information is going to be held and received. So at its worst, we know that 1 in 10 will quit. Now, this data is slightly older, around 1 in 10, but we also know that 1 in 4 will reduce hours. And actually, I think we're starting to close the gap now to be more close to the data set of 1 in 4 women are walking away. So it's not just the woman themselves that impacts by this, it's the ripple that's created because of it. And I think that we can just work a lot harder in the workplace to prevent that from happening by putting certain steps in place in order to create more inclusive workplaces. 71% say that increased support would keep them in the workplace longer. So look, this is a no-brainer. This is what women are asking for, and it's what women are calling for. And so therefore, workplaces need to start meeting them halfway. 49% have said that they have raised perimenopause with their employers. So that's over half of respondents to this particular survey have said that they are talking about it already. So what we need is the person receiving that information from the workplace, whether it be a colleague or a manager, to hear that information and create a safe space to absorb that. And that's where there's a lot of disjointment at the moment. So I'm going to just sort of take us away from that. I'm going to come back to the workplace in just a moment, but I know that lots of you will be on this call because you'll want to think about, well, what can I do for myself? How can I support myself? And again, I'm creating this space. I'm not a medical professional, so I'm not going to talk to you about treatment, medication or anything like that. I'm going to look at this more through a holistic lens. And one of the really big questions that I ask my clients when we sit down together and start the exec coaching partnership is, how much are you making yourself and your health a priority? And, I think we can all kind of, I'm the same, I run a business, I'm a mum of 2, I'm running around all the time. It's so easy for me to drop myself down the order of priorities, and I'm sure it is for you as well. So this is just a gentle nudge with absolute love and kindness to sort of take a moment to look at what you're doing for yourself and really hold a bit of accountability around how you're supporting yourself and your health. So look, first and foremost, my recommendation is certainly to treat your symptoms. So despite it being quite a challenging time to see a GP, and it's a bit of a GP lottery, and I know what it's like, even just getting an appointment these days is really hard, isn't it? There are things that you can do to really advocate for yourself. So research, really understand what might be going on for you, understand what perimenopause and menopause is. I would really encourage you, if you're starting to recognize symptoms, to log them. You can either do this with pen and paper, you can do it on your notes on your iPhone, and you can also get different apps to support you with this. And bearing in mind also, if you're in perimenopause, you will potentially still be bleeding. So there's a way of sort of logging your symptoms through your cycle and cycle mapping as well, if that is your thing. And what that is doing is actually it's feeding you back data. Is this a problem? What's disrupting me here? And how is this impacting my quality of life? I think these are the things that you have to really start looking at. And it's a case of, a lot of women, certainly with pain, and you're also talking to someone here who is stage 4 endometriosis and adenomyosis. So I've been dismissed multiple times over the last decade, with my health symptoms. And one of the things that I reflect on, that I'm sharing this with you today, is that because I have learned to advocate for myself and I've educated myself, which I know is a full-time job alongside everything else that we have to do. And I guess I had sort of the skill set to, tackle some of this a little bit like I would a journalist. I interviewed people, I got to the bottom of what was going on. And it still can sometimes be quite challenging. So what has really served me well is having a log of symptoms. There is an app called the Balance app, and I believe it's still free, where you can log your symptoms and then you can download it as a PDF, so you can attach that to any kind of online e-consult and things like that. And also with brain fog, and certainly for me, recalling dates of different things, it was tripping me up. So that certainly helped. Self-advocacy is really, really important. And really mapping out and understanding and strategizing almost how that conversation will go with a GP. When you speak to your GP surgery as well, if you've got something where you think, yeah, I'm not satisfied with this, and actually, frankly, I don't want to put up with it, it's impacting my life now, and you go to see the GP, when you speak to the receptionist, ask for a double appointment. It's really, really tricky to get anything done for them, let alone for you as a patient, in the 10 minutes that we get allocated, or 8 minutes, or whatever it is right now. So ask for a double appointment, because you've got multiple different layers of things that you want to explore with them. You can ask also if there is a menopause trained nurse, community nurse, or doctor in your practice. You're in your rights to ask for that, and it's efficient because you're getting the right people in the room to have that conversation with you. I know this might also sound slightly bizarre, but I took notes in every time I went to see the GP, because I wanted to hold accountability to get what I needed from that, and almost understood, quite clearly what success would look like from that. So, that also might be something that helps sort of anchor you in that moment to really use that time effectively. So treating your symptoms absolutely has to be the first port of call. One thing that I would also really warn against is going online and talking to people who are not medically trained. The coaching world, and I say that as an exec coach, it is can be slightly, out of control in terms of people not having the right accreditations, the right insurance, and the right training to do this. So I guess checks and balances, check your sources, I suppose, if you're going to wear a journalist hat almost, to kind of say, is this person qualified to give me this information, and what advice is being given. I would also exercise caution, as I'm sure you know, around social media and scrolling through, take this supplement, pop this cream on your face, do this kind of thing. Only a medically trained doctor who knows everything else around your health, any other health conditions or any complications, can really be the right person to do that. If you are dissatisfied with your GP, if you go on the British Menopause Association website, they list all the accredited menopause doctors out there, who you can speak to, probably privately, but you can also see if your corporate health insurance will cover you for speaking to a doctor for this. So that's kind of treating your symptoms. We can get into the chat in a moment if there's something more that you want to stretch or or deepen or clarify there. The other holistic pillar is exercise and nutrition. We know now through research and lots of evidence-backed information that strength training is really encouraged in midlife for women, to build up muscle, maintain strength. It's good for your bones. It really helps prevent things such as osteoporosis as you age. So it's about really strengthening what you've got and really looking after yourself. Exercise, getting out in nature, walking. There was something, actually, if you subscribe to the Times, there was something in the Sunday Times just this weekend about the benefits of light jogging for supporting midlife health and bones and muscle. So if you're a jogger or dog walker, anything like that, the power of nature, fresh air, all of those things. And this is all stuff okay? So that's why I'm not going into this in so much detail, because these are the things that we sometimes need a kind of loving kick with, don't they? Like, oh, I need to go and get my steps in. I need to prioritize this. Similarly, nutrition, take a moment to educate yourself from evidence-backed sources. I'm going to share resources because I'm mindful. I keep saying evidence-backed. I will share some resources with you at the end for you to screen grab. But really understanding how you nourish your body and feed your hormones at this point is really valuable information that you can absorb for yourself and ask of your medical professionals. And then your overall well-being, this kind of umbrella term, isn't it? Well-being, but it's things like sleep. How are we creating really good sleep hygiene? How are we supporting ourselves to go to sleep and have a restful sleep where we can, particularly where sleep can become, really disrupted during perimenopause and menopause. And also sleep and rest and restoration is how our body heals. It's also how we can show up the next day and perform in our jobs. So it's things, are we too much screen time? Are we looking at, too much scrolling? Are we not, reinforcing and supporting our boundaries during this time? Boundaries and protecting boundaries and non-negotiables are something that come up in my exec coaching practice all the time. And it's around, reaffirming how often we're going to reply to emails, when we are on call and when we are not, and when I have to ramp it up and give, and when I need to rein it back and actually really protect myself and my space. And I say this knowing that majority of you work in sport, therefore you do not work 9 to 5, and so those non-autonomous roles make that quite challenging. But it is an invitation to perhaps check in with your boundaries, to check in with your non-negotiables, perhaps going for that dog walk, or just taking a moment now that we're sort of tiptoeing into spring and we're starting to see that sunlight coming through, access to morning light and being outside and fresh air. How are we holding ourselves accountable for those things, and actually recognizing what's bringing you joy and what's nourishing you and feeding your soul is really important to protect and to maintain when I take you back to really prioritizing yourself. So there's lots of things there that we need to look at, and hopefully some of that has given you a gentle nudge. I haven't done a dog walk today because I've been busy. So actually I need to be thinking about, when do I do that? And actually one of my accountability things, which I'm totally crap at, is putting the phone down and that scrolling thing and actually picking up a book. I love reading, but I've got so detached from reading. So that's something I'm sharing, that I'm holding accountability on, and I'm putting it out into the world. And now you can all make me finish my book. So this is kind of really embedding my work smarter in menopause. I've trademarked this now because this is my coaching model. This is how I show up with my one-to-one clients, and that's really what I've written about in this book. And it's totally inspired by my work in women's sport, because women who work in sport are frankly brilliant and have set some really incredible standards, where there are some great examples there that we can transfer across to our own menopause journey. So, in summary, it's these kind of 4 pillars of embracing our uniqueness, that root system, who we are now, not who we were in our 20s and teens, but who we are now, and stepping into our power and our strengths and our values and what's important to us. you work in sport, so I'm pretty confident saying you're all probably a tremendously resilient bunch, knowing what working in sport for 2 decades is like. So sometimes we can lose sight of that. So it's about really understanding and continuing to build our resilience and what that looks like and what we need. And then our branch system is very much around our supporting our success. How are we supporting our success? Where are we getting sources of help and support from? And also the leads in autumn really represent that visual of new beginnings and personal growth. As we kind of navigate through chapters of our lives as women, there are opportunities to grow, evolve, some things we shared and let go of, and other things we sort of step into. So the tree is just kind of my visual for that. So workplace, menopause supportive cultures. I'm going to talk for a few more minutes and then we are going to get to a Q&A, just to do a time check for those of you that need it. If you are walking or anything, it is 20 to 1. So a few more minutes from me and the slides, and then we'll get into a conversation. So menopause supportive cultures. Now, this is going to become a lot more of an important thing and something that you're particularly going to hear more of certainly in the next year. And this is because menopause action plans have been legalised for organisations that are employing 250 plus people, and they are optional for 2026, but will be compulsory to be published by April 2027. This is something that the current government mandated for before they were in government, and have managed to get through in the Employment Rights Bill that came through the House in December last year. So workplaces are going to be held accountable, which is a good thing for a coach, because accountability and a bit of challenge is exactly the kind of spaces that we love working in. So if you are approaching this session today thinking, what can I take back to my workplace, or perhaps where I have the privilege of being able to influence or to shape change for this, that there are lots of different pillars. It's something that, reach out to me at the end and we can talk even further about. But it's about understanding your reality. So what works for Tesco, what works for Barclays might not work for Royal Mail. So it's about looking at how we work, how our people work. So, predominantly in sport, you're following around the different calendars and the different events. It's non-autonomous. So, it's important to understand that you're not just rinse and repeating what others are doing, and actually you're making it more efficient, but you're also making it more successful if you're really tailoring your work to your people. So asking your people and engaging in your people is also first and foremost. Many years in corporate, it's very easy to be told, and you think, after the horse has bolted, you think, we could have done something differently here, or I had something to contribute. So people-informed cultures around menopause are really, really beneficial here. And this isn't about leaving this to your women's network in a silo over here to go and do the work for you. It's about how you're bringing that into the mainstream. So policy and training, lots of organisations will have menopause policies, but lots of people in them won't know where they are, what they contain, and they probably haven't been renewed or revived for many years. I always do my workplace webinars, and I sort of start with people saying, do you have a menopause policy? And majority of people do not put their hands up because they haven't heard of one, let alone seen it. So menopause policies, that's not a dismissal of menopause policies. They have value here because they sort of are a stake in the ground, but it's about how you're sort of disrupting that and how you're presenting it, how you're communicating it, how you're holding your managers accountable to it, and how you're using it to inform your people of how you're going to show up and support them. So having them on a piece of paper just hidden away somewhere needs some work and some thinking around that. So that's potentially a challenge. Training. Managers need training in this. They need to understand their own fear, but also their own role in this. And that's not just male or female. It's everyone needs to know, what it is, what the obligations are, what the organisation expects, what support is in place. But crucially, one of the massive things that I see missing here, and I would say this as an executive coach, but it's active listening. It's that power of listening and creating psychologically safe spaces. That needs to be that needs to be held, and that needs to be trained, and managers need to be supported to do that. One of the biggest blockages that I see in the workplace, and I work in sport all the time, I think I'm probably the go-to menopause person in sport now. And a lot of governing bodies will say to me, we're just not getting going because, oh, I feel a bit awkward about having this conversation, and I'm not sure it's my place, and I don't want to overstep the mark, and I don't want to say the wrong thing. We need to sit in that discomfort because that's where the growth is here. And saying that you're scared of something doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it for the wider culture. So it's about really recognizing what actually is going on here and what emotion is this throwing up. Data and metrics is another really important angle here. How many organizations know how many women have left because of perimenopause or menopause? Very few, because they're not documenting it. And we need to, because a lot of organizations will say to me, oh, I don't think we have a problem with this. And they don't know. They're just presuming. So data and metrics really, really helps here. It's also, we are understanding that a lot of women are taking time away, sick days, they're self-certing, and they're saying that it is for anxiety or for depression. We need to create safe spaces where women can feel held by saying, I need time out because of my menopause, because that's all part of understanding what is happening for our people and what are we doing to really support them in that. So data and metrics is an angle that takes some consideration, but I think will pay dividends in the future. Community and impact. So your people, much like the pillar before, but also, in a lot of organizations, there are women's groups, there are menopause support groups, there are menopause champions being trained. How are we bringing this in to inform bigger accountability and success here? They are your secret sauce. So really use them and engage with them and support them. The role of stakeholders is massive here, in terms of accountability, but it isn't a case. This is one of the things that I used to really get frustrated around my work in women's sport at Sky, was that we used to sort of by default almost get men to talk up women's sport. Like we needed that stakeholder to really be an ally for it, but that was optional for them. Actually, stakeholders, it's not an optional, I'll come in and I'll put my exec stamp on this and support it. It's actually embodying it. It's because we know that while 50% of the population will be directly impacted, the other 50% will be indirectly impacted. So this isn't an option here. Everyone is part of the solution, in particular men. So that's why when I go into workplaces, I will not just speak to a female-only audience, because it's giving men a reason to not engage. And we need them as a collective in order to move forward in the workplace. And evidence-backed information. If you are going to share anything on your intranets, on your occupational health or anything like that, much like I've mentioned before, check your sources, check that information that you perhaps are giving out to support your people is up to date, is relevant, and is constantly refreshed and revived. So a couple of summary points then around supporting success, and particularly if you're a manager or leader here. These are kind of the 3 sticky notes you can stick on your laptop after today's session. It's about, you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be an expert in menopause. You just need to create a safe space to have a conversation, to feel heard, to have empathy and trust and safety, that person can come to you and say, this is what's going on with me. And they may need something from you. So it's about not over-promising, but also about, really creating that space where you're having that open dialogue and communication, and that you are leading in that as well and really supporting that person. So open, honest, and regular communication. Educating yourself. Perhaps one thing that you take away from today is, I need to read a book. I need to go on one of the websites Anna's going to share in just a moment, or I'm going to listen to a podcast. Educate yourself and be open to champion the conversation. If you don't know about it, say you don't know about it. It's absolutely fine. I went into a really big brand company not that long ago, and their senior leadership team was dominated by men. And I went through 5 of them because they all said, I don't know about that. I'm going to look like a Wally. I'm not going to do it. It's all about my personal brand. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to introduce Anna to talk about something that I know nothing about. And then I sat with like the 6th person and said, hey, look, this is getting ridiculous. Someone has to introduce this and actually say you don't know about it. Because vulnerable leadership here is a very powerful tool to really give permission to everyone else to say, oh, I didn't know about it either, but we're here to learn. And that is okay. And I think that kind of behavior is really stifling and frankly damaging women in the workplace. So that's probably more of a conversation perhaps for male colleagues, but I'm sharing that because if we acknowledge that there is some vulnerability and fear there on their behalf, how can we use that to actually really translate that to the wider workforce can be a really powerful tipping point. So a couple of points here about supporting success. There are other things here. I've talked about menopause action plans. Menopause in the Equality Act is, symptoms are related to protected characteristics of sex, age, and disability. So whilst menopause itself is not, there was lots of conversation a while ago about getting it sort of redefined as a disability. That's a conversation for a completely different time. But actually, it's around the protected characteristics of sex, age, and disability is where you are protected. And as a result of women educating themselves, talking in forums like this and supporting each other, we have started to see an increase, a significant increase of over 80% in successful employment tribunals related to this in 2024 to 25. So women are basically saying this isn't good enough and we expect more, and the workplace is going to have to catch up with them. So you can have a really powerful you can be powerful levers to go back to your workplaces and talk about this. Resources. So really for individuals, the column here on your left-hand side are the ones that are your kind of initial go-to. There's lots more. So if there's something very, very nuanced that you need, come back to me and I will absolutely signpost you. If I can't, I will go back to a colleague who I trust who can. So there's no daft or silly question in this world. There is something and we should get answers to everything related to this. Hopefully this is a nice starting point for you. A couple of charities there that are phenomenal. They have a staggering amount of papers and research and education on them. Menopause and Cancer is a really brilliant organisation also if you are supporting or going through cancer yourself. And then there's also, all of those resources are free, but there is a paid resource here called Horizon, which is a community hub for women, founded by 2 women who had breast cancer and went into menopause as a consequence of that. So, and full disclosure from my ethics, I am part of the Horizon team. I don't have a stake in that company, but I am employed by them as their executive coach. So that's why that's on there. And then on the right-hand side is more of a kind of workplace. If you're an HR, if you're a workplace leader, or if you're going to go back and say, right, we need to do something about this. These are all really great free resources to really help you kick off that conversation. Wellbeing of Women, they're a brilliant charity. They have a workplace menopause pledge. So that might be something that sparks some curiosity. Menopause Mandate, that's their website. They're the ones that had that data set from 15,000 women. And I'm actually going to their next event in a couple of weeks at the APPG, where they're going to be presenting some more data. So if data is your thing on this, then keep across their website. And we mentioned right at the very top, Field to Boardroom, the group in sport that I co-founded with Helen Tomlinson. If you work in sport, but if you're in HR, if you are tasked with bringing women's health, the conversation or certainly the well-being or the leadership and development area for that subject into your organisation, then please contact me. It's not a networking space. It's not if you are necessarily experiencing a health challenge. It's an action-led group to really start to further the interests of women's health and boost accountability, but also education in the workplace. The sole motivation for that is from my own experience. I don't want other women to be forced out of their careers like I was. I think we all, particularly in sport, work too damn hard to get here, and sport is better for us. So I want to really do what I can to really try and keep women thriving and doing brilliant things in sport, because I see all the time how important it is. So that's really the motivation for that. And I know I speak for Helen for that as well, because that's been her work for many, many years when she was working as the menopause employment champion. So we're going to get on to questions. Just if you're sat here thinking, oh, I want to have a chat with Anna, or how can we work together? How can she come into my organisation? How can she bring this to my leadership team? Any of these things. Let's have a chat. Drop me an email. It's here, anna@allertoncoaching.com, and we can just have a 20-minute discovery call. Let me know if you're booking in for a discovery call or a chat from the collective, because I will prioritise you. I've got kind of a limited number of 10 calls over the next 3 weeks that I can do, because it's International Women's Day. Again, another one for a debate another time, but it is a chance for me to really use my voice to try and advocate for a lot of this work that I'm doing. So it's a very, very busy month for me. So, but I will prioritise you on that list. So just drop me a note and say, can we have a chat? Totally fine. Even if you just want to share or talk in confidence about something, it's a completely safe space, and I'm here for it all. So look, talk to me about coaching, one-to-one, anything to really help your career, coaching for organizations, workshop and facilitation for organizations. I've got a public speaking role that I do also, where I go in and talk about my experience and a lot of this work. And I also have retreats. So if you fancy a nice Cornish retreat in September, contact me and I will send you some more info. But thank you. I'm really mindful that I've really gone at you here and we're close on time, so I'm going to just stop sharing the screen. Kate, I wonder, just for efficiency, if you could kick us off with the first question that may have come up in the chat box, and anyone else get your questions in, and we'll try and get through as many as we can.
Lovely. Please do put your questions in the chat. Anna, that's brilliant. Thank you. I wish I'd heard this 6 years ago when I was going through my own menopause journey. I think it's really fascinating. And I love the data that we now have, which we didn't really have even 5 or 6 years ago. So that's really encouraging. Is there
Thank you.
anybody that you've come across that is doing it well, looking after menopausal women in the workplace? What does good look like? Who is it? What have they done to make it good?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple of good examples. I wouldn't say that there's kind of a shining example of it. You know, there's some I've heard. Let me just give you some examples of some different things that I've heard from people where this is working really well. So when I started going through this, my health insurance was with Aviva, and at the time they only covered for gynecology. They didn't cover for menopause. So I have heard of lots of different organisations getting rid of certain insurance providers that don't have a provision for menopause and bringing ones in that do. And so therefore they're recognising that their workforce are struggling to see a GP. So they are using their power and their influence to say to insurance providers, we want this for our people. So that's one really good disruptor of saying that isn't serving us, but this is, and actually being really brave and bold to put in that kind of foundational support. Uniforms, I'm not sure how relevant this is actually to many of you working here, but the police, and this was just down to one person's advocacy, I have to say, it's sort of started a snowball effect. So it's the power of our voices. In the police, in the Met, there's this one woman who she was in charge of teams, and she was on blue lights. So she was going out at all hours. So again, non-autonomous. The material on her uniform was horrendous when she was sweating and when she got really hot. And it would cause chafing and skin sores. So she just didn't want to do that anymore. And so she started to find different sources of uniform. For example, in the police, their whole kit that they have to wear, the radio, the stab vest, all of that equates to an extra stone. And then you're sweating underneath that. That is it's just not safe. And then you're also expecting women to go at speed on blue lights. So she started doing a whole big advocacy piece, and the police actually really listened and made changes. So much so that I think even Tesco, they took some of the learning from that, and they changed their supplier for their uniform to make their staff more comfortable. So they're small changes. I think culturally it's training, it's training managers to have these conversations is what's holding women in their jobs for longer, and that is starting to be evidenced. So I think investing in training for having good conversations and having an understanding and education around these subjects. So that's a couple there I could waffle on, but mindful of time. Have we got another
Yeah,
one, Kate?
that's really interesting, Anna. Thank you. I'm also conscious of time. We do like to keep to our hour if we can. If you have any questions specifically for Anna, I will email everybody on the call with her contact details. And she said she's very happy to follow up and ask those questions, answer those questions one on one.
Mm.
Do look
There's
out
just
for
a
the.
couple here, Kate. Like
Go
Beth,
on.
please come to me directly and I'll answer your question about how to have conversation with your employer. Please come to me. Just take 20 minutes. We'll do that. And I'll answer that question for you because that can be such a difference between making life so much better for you. Nervous about ageism, totally get it. And it's that vulnerability, isn't it? So I can help you on that. So Beth, please just send me a note. Anyone else hearing that, thinking the same, please don't think, oh, I'm going to be polite. It's Anna's time. Just do it. That's what I'm here for. Um, I'm just having a quick whiz through, but if that's relevant to a very specific question, that invitation is there for you all. Absolutely.
Lovely. We've got some questions about example policies, how we do those. And I know you've made a point that they need to be led by the workforce, but are there any starting points that you could recommend?
Yeah, I think there are policies, there are policy templates online, some of those resources that I shared. That needs to be carefully handled though by HR and legal teams because it's around what you're putting in and what is relevant contractually and all of those things. So probably not the safest to just rinse a template off of chat gpt but actually go to, I think if you sign the workplace pledge with wellbeing of women, I think there are templates there that you can use and then you
Brilliant.
can amend. So they are out there, just get them from trusted sources.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. The one I think I've took is about sitting with your discomfort. I think that's a great piece of advice to give to leaders who might not want to tackle it because they feel uncomfortable. Anyway,
Mm.
thank you so much, Anna. We will get back to you. Watch out for the follow-up email, which has got the resources in. I'll send all those links that Anna posted. Thank you all for joining us. And a huge, massive, massive thank you to Anna. Such an important topic when we're driving to get more women leaders in the women's. Well, we need to retain the women that are already here in the sports industry. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for being here, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, are you okay if I just take a moment to read some of the
Yes,
questions
no, hang
in case
on.
there's
Please
something
do hang on, and I'll.
directly that I can support someone with? I just want to have a quick
Yeah,
read.
no, absolutely. I can send
It's
you the chat.
impossible to keep across them. I don't know if I can get the transcript of the. Can I
I
get
can
get?
send you the chat, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Because sometimes it can be such a brave thing to actually put something on there, and I don't want someone to feel that it has gone unnoticed. Um, yeah, the community piece with women in sport and also volunteers. It's massive. It's such a
Mm.
massive piece of work. There's something here around hockey umpires and community. It's very complex in sport. I mean, we know this, don't we, from field to boardroom?
It's such wide-ranging impact, isn't it? That's if you do it wrong
Mm,
or if you do it right. It's so important.
yeah. And it is that whole thing, isn't it, of like just start, you can overthink this conversation so much, can't you?
Yeah, and just going out and just even to start reading it about it is the bit, isn't it? Start the
Mm,
conversation, say the
mm.
word menopause out loud.
Oh, it's a really nice spread of different sports here, isn't there? Yeah. Maybe to save you from lingering on here, I might just take you up on being able to share that chat with me, and I'll take a moment now to go through it all. Kate, that would be really, really
I
great.
absolutely will. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much,
Amazing.
Anna. That was brilliant.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for creating the space. Let's just hope that some people are able to go back and those spaces get created in their workplaces as well. And then it's that ripple, isn't it? Then we start,
Yeah.
it's like we said at the very top, if we've got 100 on, and then, you know, they all then go and talk to a partner, a friend over dinner, that then goes from 100 to 200 talking about menopause. It can be really impactful.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you,
That's
Kate, for
brilliant. Thank
everything leading
you.
up as well. It's been a breeze as ever.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. It's fab. Nice to see you. And we'll stay in touch. I'll send you that information.
Perfect. All right,
Thank you,
take care of
everybody.
yourself. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.